Call this meeting of the February 27th, 2024 City of Pittsburgh Commission meeting to order. Please rise for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pastor Pete Mayo, would you come up?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to offer a brief prayer before the meeting. Let us pray. Blessed are you, Most High, Almighty God. May it please you to bless our city and its commission meeting this evening. Help us with your wisdom to identify the common ground that unifies us as a great community. May we stay mindful that it is your work that we do to serve your people. We give you thanks for beneficial weather and ask protection as seasons bring changes. We ask all of this in the name of all that each of us holds sacred and holy. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pete. All right, I would like to recognize a couple Pittsburgh Positive recipients. If Leah Gagnon and the Wesley House, her Wesley House team, please come up.
Okay, all right.
I invited members of our advisory board for the first time at this church to join us to be recognized.
All right, so this is just, again, something that I started when I took over as mayor this year, hoping to end the meetings on a positive note. And a couple meetings ago, we took notice of the work that you all do tirelessly to take care of a issue in our community that nobody has an answer for, but you guys work tirelessly daily to try to address that and address people that are homeless, people that are maybe going without food, helping out in the food pantry. Good work you guys do at the food pantry is very much appreciated. So with that, I would just like to recognize you guys with this certificate in the work that you do, and thank you for everything you do for the community.
Thank you very much.
And our other one is Miss Gail Shepard and her youth services team.
I didn't bring a team.
You didn't bring a team? Well, I know you have a team, Gail.
I made a mistake at work.
How are you?
Just fine.
It's good to see Miss Gail. I mentioned this in when I recognized Gail last meeting. The work she does and her team does at the Pittsburgh Public Library to get young people excited about reading, the puppet shows that she does, the creativity she uses. I think Bev said you have done something like 3,000 or
I
3,300.
think they've calculated it.
I think something like 3,000
Do math for that.
story times and or puppet
yeah.
shows. So it's amazing. My kids are teenagers, are out of college now, or being out of school now, but they look forward to it every week to come and see and check out books. But what you guys do is amazing. So thank you for inspiring young people to read, to get out and read and make it exciting. So
It definitely is a team.
I know it
I
is.
just do parts of it. I get the public part of it, but there's a lot of really good people over there.
It's a great
And
service.
how are Grant and Grace?
They're great. They're great.
They can read.
Thank you so much.
That's the other amazing thing about Miss Gail and her team. They remember kids' names when they're 17 and 20. So it's phenomenal. So thank you guys. Thank you both. All right, I would like to open the meeting up for public input. Anyone want to have public input? Please come forward. State, if you would, just remember, state your name, address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes, please.
Evening. My name's Kevin O'Connell, 1602 North Grand. I have a couple of comments here. One of the things is we noted that there's been quite a bit of work going on down at the Mount Olive Cemetery, and the crew that's doing that down there is doing a really good job. I want to recognize them for what the improvements of re-erecting headstones and things like that down there at Mount Olive that they've been doing. One of the things noted in the city agenda was there's a large invoice for a shelter for 1 week during January. And there is a big invoice to cover staff, security, cleaning, maintenance, and repairs. And I'd like to ask the city, are there other invoices and other bills coming for that? My second question is, it's been publicly stated several times that the Wesley House doesn't receive tax dollars or grant money. And if that's so, why are we disbursing taxpayers' money to Wesley House for the shelter? And lastly, what was the legal mechanism that allows Wesley House to operate an overnight shelter down there? That seems to have been going on a lot longer than a week. I appreciate your time. Thanks very much.
Thank you. And just so everyone knows, we do have that bill on the agenda in the regular meeting, so we'll wait till then to discuss that part.
John Lair, North Joplin Street. I would like to bring up an issue that the city loaned Jolly Fox $200-some thousand to be paid off so much a month. Yet they signed the contract in July of 2019. They're still owing the money. They're not paying the money to the city, and I want to know what we're going to do about that. And the next thing is, our Economic Development Director, Blake, he's got quite a job to do. And when things go smooth and he loaned money and you sign contracts and with individuals and businesses, that's great. Everything looks great. But when we run across the situation where they're not paying or somebody has to work on it to get this repaid or foreclosure or whatever, we need to work a little harder on this. They're trusting us. We need to trust them. Either they get it paid or we get with the city attorney and city manager and let's go a little bit farther. And like I say, our economic development director is Blake, and that's something we need very bad, and I'm glad that he does this. But the fact is, we have to follow up on the things that are bad as well as good. And I'd like to see a little more of that. Fact of the matter is, I'd like to see him come up with a written report once a month to the city commission to let them know where we're at on each one of these things. And if somebody's getting behind, we need to find out. Here back in November, I was at a meeting and one of the commissioners brought it up. At that time, they went into executive session. As far as I know, nothing's ever been done. And I think it's time you look at it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, we'll close, seeing none, we'll close public input. And we'll move into the consent agenda. I think the Commissioner Munsell wanted to pull item I off. Anybody else want to pull any other items off of that? All right. With the exception of item A, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I second it.
All right, there's been a motion and second to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item I. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Oh, I'm sorry, roll call vote.
Brooks?
Yes.
Height?
Yes.
McNay?
Yes.
Munsell?
Yes.
Sigley?
Yes.
Motion for the consent agenda passed. All right, item I, approval of ordinance number G 1356, amending section 54-2 of the Pittsburgh City Code to include defecating upon any public place or building or upon private property when the same has not been designated as defined as a restroom as a Class C misdemeanor, and authorize the mayor to sign the ordinance on behalf of the city.
Good evening, Commissioners,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor. Last summer, kind of in response to some things that were going on in town, we approached the city prosecutor about what he'd like to see as far as like a specific ordinance addressing that issue. And his recommendation was to take the one we have on the books regarding urination and just include that other aspect of it to allow for enforcement and prosecution.
Okay, Ben, the questions I have, and which I've got a lot of calls about this situation. I've witnessed public urination a couple of years ago myself on the corner across the street from me. How are we gonna enforce this?
The aspect of the ordinance that was taken out required something to do with being in view of somebody, being able to actually just have it just plainly doing that in an area that's not designated as a restroom is going to grant us a little bit, but more broader enforcement capability. And we recommend that anyone who observes this contact the police department immediately. We have officers respond.
So it doesn't have to be a police officer, it'd be a citizen that witnesses this and reports it to the police and.
Yes,
then-
that's correct.
So they did give a description and.
Give a description of the suspect, and we could try to apprehend and identify the offender and issue them a citation or make an arrest if we need to.
And I know this is probably for the courts, but, it's a Class C violation, and fixed by the courts. They could go to jail for not to exceed a month,
Up to a month, that's
and
correct.
they could be fined $500.
Up to $500, correct.
And they could, both of them could happen.
Yes, one or the other in addition to.
Well, I know, unfortunately, our public restrooms that the city owns and are there for the public to use, they are being vandalized and destroyed, and we're putting a lot of money in that, but, as far as this goes, somehow we gotta get this stopped.
No,
And,
absolutely,
I appreciate that ordinance has been amended to include this.
absolutely. And I apologize, I'm sorry, I just picked up a new pair of glasses, my first ever on Friday, and it turns out they're bifocals, and I'm like having a hard time
I
getting
wonder
it
why
out
you're
and
looking at me
insert,
kinda
so.
funny, but that's fine, but thanks.
So you're not giving us a stink eye?
No, I'm trying to, they say there's a sweet spot in here, you'll be able to, and I cannot find it for the life of me.
So Ben, does this, by rewording this, I assume gives citizens the ability to be a complainant on a notice to appear? Is that?
That would be an option for the court.
If they wanted
Yeah.
to, since an
They-
officer's
Yeah,
not-
we can come and take a report, and if we can't find the offender, but the person knows who it is, for example, they can come in, meet with our city prosecutor and say, I still want to be, sign a complaint against them, and we can proceed as best as we can from there to identify and issue that notice to appear to that person.
Okay.
So Ben, in the last year, how many citations have we issued just?
For the urination.
Right, because it was just urination and now.
I don't have that information in front of me, Commissioner, I'm sorry.
And if the individual is homeless and has no resources, then they're not fined the $500.
That would be a matter for the prosecutor and the judge to determine.
And at 5 o'clock, and this may be Darren or Toby, we lock all of the public bathrooms? Do we close up public bathrooms?
When do we close the public?
They stay open until probably sunset during the summer, during the season.
Okay, so people need to get their business done before then, if they have no place to go.
And if
Well, there is
businesses
places to
on,
go, there is.
No, there's not, and not if we lock the public bathrooms, where are they gonna go?
They can go to restaurants and ask to use the restrooms, and they are allowed to do that. But unfortunately, the same thing happens in some of these businesses with their restrooms that's happened to our public restrooms, so.
And I'm not saying that there isn't a problem and that we don't need this ordinance, but I just would like to point out that if you're homeless and you have no place to go, you have no place for sanitation, what choice do you have? And we haven't really offered an alternative or even talked about it in relationship to this ordinance, so.
Well, I'm not singling out homeless, this is not just the homeless.
I know.
That's causing the problem, there's other people.
Yeah.
That are bound and determined to wreak havoc in the city and with this, so it's not on the homeless only, so.
I don't think we can afford to leave the bathrooms open 24 hours a day. Toby would be making service agreements with people every single day of the week. So,
I'm not advocating that.
no,
I'm
no,
just-
I understand
yeah,
that, but I
okay,
meant,
okay,
this
yeah.
happened long before the homeless issue. Because sometimes kids get wild and they karate chop things in there, and then you never know. How they break stuff is beyond Toby and his crew, so. We just added the words.
I have no further questions, if no further questions, I move to approve.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve item I. Roll call vote?
Brooks,
Yes.
Height,
Yes.
McNay,
Yes.
Mansell,
Yes.
Zigley.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Item I passed.
Job, Ben.
Good luck with your glasses.
All right, moving into public hearing. Item A, Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, Downtown Commercial Rehabilitation Application. The city advertised for a public hearing to be held on Tuesday, February 27th, 2024 at 5:30 PM in the City Commission room located in the Law Enforcement Center at 201 North Pine for the purpose of considering an application to be submitted to the Kansas Department of Commerce for Small Cities Community Development Block Grant Funds under the Downtown Commercial Rehabilitation category pertaining to the Phase 1 rehabilitation of 211 North Broadway with an estimated project cost of $637,543 and a grant request of $300,000. Following the public hearing, we'll either vote to approve or disapprove the submittal of the application to the Kansas Department of Commerce for Small Cities Community Development Block Grant Funds. Subsection 2 will adopt the resolution number 1276 certifying legal authority to apply for the funding. Subsection 3 will adopt a statement of assurances and certifications. Subsection 4, we will approve or disapprove the residential anti-displacement and relocation assistance plan. Item 5, approve the disclosure report. Item 6, approve the determination of level of review. And item 7, approve an administration agreement with the Southeast Kansas Regional Planning Commission for the administration of the grant, if awarded, and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents on behalf of the city. Good evening, Kim.
Yes. Mayor, Commissioners, I would like to invite Shawnee Lorenz up to join me. She's going to share a little bit about the project. This isn't new. You guys have seen this with the EDAC and also the Slum and Blight Declaration. But Shawnee, I'd like to share just a little bit about the project, show you some pictures. This is rescuing a downtown building and an empty lot next to it. This is much needed. It is restoring the front of the building, and she can get into that as well. But it's a beautiful building at 211 North Broadway, and we really look forward to this project. We are seeking a CDBG grant to help assist with the cost of those projects. So, Shawnee, and then I also have Susan Gailmore here with the Southeast Kansas Regional Planning Commission to answer questions about all those other documents. So, we'll be glad to assist with anybody's questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Mayor, Commissioners. You're probably getting tired of seeing me. This has been a process that we've gone through over the last few months. Like Kim had mentioned, last month we declared the property at 211 North Broadway a blighted structure. As you're probably aware, some of you, the block has fallen into disrepair over recent years, and so the entire block has been blighted. But we are excited to be taking on this project. Right now, we are pursuing taking on historic for some reason, I'm like a little nervous today. Usually I'm not nervous. So taking on historic projects like this are costly and time consuming if you're doing them right. And that's what we're committed to doing. I've mentioned before, this will be our third project, and hopefully there will be many more to come in the future. But these projects are very costly. And so one way that we are able to make this happen, a project of this scale, is through grant monies. And so I would like to give an overview of the project, and then we'll have Susan come share the rest of the documents that are required for the grant. So I will go to a rendering really quickly. This is a conceptual image of what the building will look like. Obviously, the front is much more ornate. It will have all of its historic charm and be painted a historic color scheme. We're also working in cooperation with the state's Historic Preservation Office and trying to get the project listed on the State Historic Register. And so the historic aspects of this project will be brought back into their beauty. And then we are also going to add, unfortunately, this building is not handicap accessible, so all of our community's members can't enjoy it. And so we are going to be adding additional entries to the side of the building, since there's not a way without damaging the front to be able to do that. And so that will allow all of the members of our community to enjoy this space. Currently, the building is over 4,200 square feet on the first floor and 1,600 on the second. Not many businesses downtown right now are needing 4,200 square feet. And so that's why we're dividing it into multiple units. So there will be 2 commercial tenants in that first floor, and that'll be completed in phase one, as will the building envelope. That's what we are asking for CDBG monies to help us complete, and only certain line items. And then the apartment above will be completed in short order after that project is closed out. I noted here, the estimated project cost is goodness gracious, $600,037,543. We're requesting $300,000. I would like to note, I think if I had heard that, not just to the commission, but also to anyone watching, I would think, man, these developers are getting so much money for these projects. Wow. Let me tell you, these buildings, especially historic structures, there's a reason that they're not getting preserved for our children's children to enjoy, and that's because it's so cost prohibitive to do the work the right way. And so a lot of these monies are going to be, all of these monies will be put into saving the building. And there are many requirements for testing, many labor standards. For instance, it will have to be a prevailing wage job. There have to be grant administrators. There are certain roles that have to be fulfilled per grant specifications that take a lot of this money. And so I would just like to make clear that that Lorenz House Development is passionate about these projects. However, none of the fee, we will basically be paying ourselves. No CDBG monies will be going to the developer. They will be going to preserve the structure itself and to help a grant coordinator make sure that we are complying with all CDBG standards. And so that, I just like to make that clear, because I know if I were sitting here, I would think, man, that's a lot of money. They're getting all that in their pocket, and none of it will be going to us directly. It will all be going to local contractors and someone to ensure that we are maintaining compliance at the local level per all state and federal regulations. So that's just a little overview of the project. The outdoor green space will be used as an event space and a courtyard. We look forward to having community events there and just allowing that to be a nice open space that the community can use for special events or people can use for private gatherings. So do I have any questions about the project?
Yes.
Perfect.
There are so many unused buildings in the downtown area right now.
Yes.
You're proposing putting money into another unused, or a building that could potentially fall into not being used. I mean, we have a lot of places in the downtown area and slightly off the downtown area right now that are not rented, not being utilized by businesses, etc. And here you're proposing another one.
We actually already have 2 intended tenants that are in the process of signing letters of intent to fill this space. We'll be already, before the project has taken flight, we anticipate 100% occupancy. And those individuals have a desire to be in a historic space, and they're excited about that possibility. So there are also other spaces. That's one thing, Lorenz House Development, we see the value in these buildings and we want to preserve them. We don't have the desire to own them and immediately turn around and lease them in what we would consider an unacceptable condition. A lot of tenants have had experiences when they were in buildings that didn't have proper upkeep. They may pay a little less in rent, but they have a lot more headache. And so we have built our reputation on creating quality spaces for these tenants to occupy, and that's how we've been able to but we have tenants who are signing letters of intent to fill these spaces because they want quality and history. They don't want the headache. And so that's one of the things that makes this project exciting, is that we're already looking to have a full space already.
And the apartment is a single apartment?
It is. It's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment up there. Yes.
So the tenants are your commercial?
On the first floor, yes. Per the grant specifications, we need to have, commercial intent that people are interested in filling the commercial space. However, CDBG monies cannot go into the second floor apartment and completing that. We'll complete those all with private funds through Lorenz House Development.
What kind of follow-up with Doc and thank God you have some tenants already lined up, or you probably would maybe not have done the project.
Yeah.
Because there is a lot of buildings that being fixed up for commercial. Probably, you know, there's that many people out there to fill the buildings that, you know what I'm saying?
You know, it's actually
Competition-wise.
funny that you say that because I have, since the beginning of the year, received calls for asking if we have available space by new businesses that are coming to town or businesses that want to relocate downtown to a quality building. And I have to tell them, I'm sorry, right now, we don't have any space. You know, so that the interest is definitely there, or at least from people that have approached us for, you know, a quality commercial space where they feel comfortable welcoming their clients.
That's good.
You need a bigger crew.
Bigger crew, more money, more time, that's all. Yeah.
There's no further questions, I move to approve.
Second.
Is there, we have.
We need to
so
open the
public
Oh, we
hearing,
don't,
so-
oh,
So,
Yeah, sorry.
so, with that said, no more comments. Thank you, Shawnee. But we'll open this for public hearing if there's any comments from the public regarding this grant application, this project. Anyone?
Must be. Kevin O'Connell at 1602 North Brand. It's a great idea. I think we can redevelop that downtown area. If we get some more commercial business down there, it's just gonna contribute to the tax base. There's already a housing shortage known in the town as far as apartments and rental homes and stuff goes. Dual purpose, I think it's a good idea. Thank
I
you.
had one more question now, and I'm sure you already got that covered. What about parking?
There are 5 private parking places for the tenants on the backside of the building. It'll be permit parking, and in the instance that someone parks there, they can be towed away from the tenants.
Thanks.
Thank you, Kevin. Anyone else? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. All right, I have a question. Are we voting, or I'll need a motion, but when we get the motion, are we voting on the grant as a whole with all these items? Okay, just one, okay. All right, I'd entertain a motion from the commissioners.
1 through 7?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
application for the
The
grant.
application for the grant?
Yeah.
All right. Been moved and seconded by, I think, Doctor was
Cheryl.
by Cheryl first. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All right, motion carried.
Right.
Just a side note, Johnny, thank you for continuing to invest in the community, so some great projects. Appreciate it. All right, consider the following. Item A, Southeast Kansas Urgent Care Project. Consider the recommendation of the Economic Development Advisory Committee, EDAC, to approve the request submitted by SEK Urgent Care for an amount equal to 10% of the total project cost associated with the renovation of the property located at 302 East Centennial, with the city's investment funded through the revolving loan fund, RLF, not to exceed $94,850. Good evening, Blake.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the commission. Proud to bring you a recommendation from the EDAC. This is a project involving, as you mentioned, the long vacant building at 302 East Centennial. Dr. Brent Cousins and Michelle Cousins, longtime business owners here in Pittsburgh, have acquired this building and are investing a significant amount of money in redeveloping it. So they came to the Economic Development Advisory Committee a few weeks ago and asked for an incentive on the end of the project. So I want to just maybe ask Dr. Cousins to come up and tell you a little bit about the project, and then I'll come back and talk about the recommendation from the EDAC. So, Dr. Cousins.
All right, thanks, Blake. Well, this project is about 4 years coming. We purchased this building back in 2019, and then the pandemic hit. And so we procrastinated and put that off until we weren't quite so busy, and the supply chain kind of come back down to normalcy. So the project's nearing completion, and you've probably all seen a lot of the work going on. But we've been at Meadowbrook Commons for 18 years, and we've pretty much outgrown that space. And Jim Bishop approached me
like I said, in 2019. And I took him up on the offer, and then we went through probably 5 or 6 different design phases over the years. And we've going to have a much larger clinic, much cleaner space. Going to be a great building for the community for years to come. I don't know if you know any of the history of that building. It used to be a Golden Corral. I have the original menu from that building. And then it was the Guy Shop. And then I think Jim Bishop, I believe, occupied the space. So the next part of this, what you don't see here, is there's a very steep grade from Centennial to the building. And so the building's taken on a lot of water over the years. And so beginning tomorrow, that grade's coming down, and we're going to move water, as Darren says. It's expensive, and that's correct. We plan on having that green space to the north of the building there, and on the west side will be parking, and to the south as well. It'll be handicap accessible, obviously, in the main entrance and along the west side there at another area. We gutted the whole inside. It was a freestanding truss system, and we were able to go back in there and build what we wanted. We did leave 2 bathrooms intact, but all in all, it's a completely brand new structure and done right. Like somebody else said earlier, we did it right. Didn't skimp on any corners, and that's going to be a proud facility for SC Cares and Care. Another company of ours, Direct On-Site Care, is going to be housed in there. We expect to see significant growth in that. Traffic's going to be, I think, more significant than what we've seen in the past. So, appreciate any help you get.
Is your entrance to the building just off the Meadowbrook parking lot, or is there a?
There's the separate
Is there
entrance
separate-
there, just off that brick,
Office Centennial?
that little brick monument there. It's just to the west of it. That's going to be expanded. The city's going to co-op with me to expand that entrance a little bit, putting new sidewalks around, and probably use a city co-op for that as well. City engineers involved as well, so.
What's your timeline?
Well, I've said 2 to 3 weeks, 3 or 4 times, so.
Maybe you're not.
Probably 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay.
Thanks, Dr. Cousins.
You bet.
So, Mr. Mayor, members of the commission, the total expected investment by the Cousins on this project is just under $1 million, $948,500. So the recommendation from the EDAC is at the end of the project that the Cousins would be reimbursed for 10% of the total project value, with the city's investment not to exceed $94,850. And again, that would happen upon completion of the project. The Cousins would show verification of what they spent, and they would be reimbursed for 10% of that amount. So with that, be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Please note that I recuse myself from this vote.
I would move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the request. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Item B, Code Blue Warming Shelter. Consider staff recommendation to reimburse Wesley House $6,003.49 for the operation of the Code Blue Warming Center from January 13th, 2024 through January 20th, 2024.
Mayor, members of the commission. So in January, we discussed the upcoming freezing temperatures as we do each year. In the past, a Code Blue shelter is something that people in the community have come up with, that during the very, very, very cold season, we need to get people off the streets. We usually step back and watch how the community reacts before the city does anything. In the past, we've had churches that have provided that service through volunteers. Sometimes we provide security, but we're not really in the security business. What we usually end up doing is just responding as the police need to. Sometimes that goes well, sometimes it doesn't. In recent years, we've actually used Lincoln Center before to stay open. I think last year, the year before, we were able to do that, and there was a small number of people that used it, but there was a group of volunteers that had organized and come up with all the supplies and really staffed it for us. This year, after looking around, we had considered Lincoln Center. Toby is the Parks Director. With the amount of programming that he currently had in there, he thought it wouldn't be a good idea. We looked for some other facilities, and as the talks proceeded, it became clear that Wesley House was gonna step up and say, look, we can use this facility, we may need some help, but we're already operating the warming center, so they had a grant for that. It did obviously for 8 days get extremely cold. Fortunately, I think up to 48 was the average, and maybe up to, I don't know, 60 people overnight a few times, stayed in that shelter. The bill you have before you, after discussing it with Wesley House, they gave us a $13,000 bill for the cost of the operations. I told them I thought it would be appropriate if we covered the wages and salaries, because that's something that, you know, whether it was security or whatever, the city didn't have people over there. Some of the other things, if we're not on site operating it, it just seemed like a clean break to say, well, if we'll stick with the people that were over there, and if things broke and how that got handled, since it wasn't really the oversight of the city on that, I didn't think that we should pay for that. So they agreed. The bill you have before you is roughly $6,000 for those 8 days. The question was brought up in public input. Why are we spending tax money to the shelter? Well, we're spending tax money. I mean, we're going to do whatever we can to keep people from freezing to death in Pittsburgh. That's one of our jobs. It's not a budgeted item. I don't know where we would budget it. If you guys want to talk about identifying a building and getting more formally involved in that, we can, but it seems like over the past several years, organizations have stepped up and done the lion's share of that for us, with the exception of the year we used Lincoln. The other question was, are there other bills and invoices coming? I can't predict the weather. I would imagine if in March it gets below freezing for 8 or 10 days, that somebody's going to have to step up in the community and provide that code blue shelter. And if they do, I would think that the city would be a reasonable partner in something like that. But that's what's before you. I'd be happy to answer your
Clarification.
questions.
So this isn't a recurring fee, this is just this is just a request for the overage that Wesley House and collaborators went over as far as what their budget was? Is that
Yeah,
a good way of saying it?
I believe there was a grant that was for 90 days. That grant was to cover specific operations. I think it was overnight, Monday through Friday, and then maybe overnight just on the weekends, but not 8 to 8 on the weekends. That service, that grant, it's my understanding, did not cover a code blue shelter, which this was.
Who applied for the grant?
Who applied? It was a Wesley House grant, I believe.
Wesley House applied for it.
I don't know who applied for it, but I know it was being administered from Wesley House.
Is this a grant we approved back in May of '23 for the Emergency Solutions Grant? Is this part of that?
No.
No.
No, the Emergency Solutions Grant is an annual grant that we do as part of our HUD services. This is something different than that.
But it does include day shelter in that grant, so that's why I was curious about that. Emergency shelter, 90 days or less.
So, Mayor, Commissioners, that is for the day shelter operations. Has nothing to do with the cold weather shelter or the cold blue. That is to run their day-to-day operations. So when they applied, they asked for cold weather shelter, but when we were approved, we didn't get the funding for that. So we gave them money for day shelter operations.
Okay,
And that was
so,
for 90 days.
That's just through the grant period, for the 15-month grant period.
so the amount you applied for to begin with was, you received less than,
Yes, so we applied for, I think, about almost 500,000. We only got,
295?
yes, so that's what they applied for. That included the day shelter plus cold weather. we only got awarded about 95,000 for rapid rehousing funding, homeless prevention funding, and then the day shelter expenses.
Okay.
So the housing office operates the rapid rehousing and the homeless prevention funds, and then they got day shelter funds.
The expenses for that whole 8 days was $13,000. That's pretty significant. How many people were working at the time when you're paying $770 a day in wages?
I'm
The list I saw had 9 or 10 people on it, but
And I think you have to keep in mind that in order to expand hours, people were working additional hours, so it was overtime wages.
Wasn't this 24 hours too?
Yeah.
Correct. That 8 days was extended from an overnight shelter to 24 hours.
Right.
So it was 24/7 for 8 days.
But going back to the paperwork, again, sorry, I like to read. We dedicated the $50,000 towards staffing and supplies needed to pilot a 90-day emergency cold weather shelter at Wesley House.
So that was last year. That was,
This money is good. 2023 and 2024.
no, they piloted that last year with the grant. So they used money with the 2022 to 2023 grant. So they applied for new grant for 2023 to 2024 for a cold weather shelter. So we didn't get funding as high as they asked for. So all they got funding for was to operate the day shelter. So just the day-to-day operations between 8 and 5.
So we as a commission approved the grant application, but we did not receive that portion of the grant.
You approved the grant to apply for, I think, total between the Wesley House and the city of Pittsburgh. I think it was like a total of almost 200 or something. So we only got awarded 95. So a majority of that went to rapid rehousing and homeless prevention funds. And then some of that then the remaining went to the day shelter for the Wesley House to operate between the hours of 8 and 5.
Did you guys ask in advance if the city would help as far as the staffing, or did you just present a bill? I'm just curious about that.
I'm not.
No, I know, but I
she's not
meant,
with Wesley House, she's with the city.
oh, yeah, oh, sorry.
Yeah, so
Sorry.
no,
We've been talking about how to handle
I'm sorry,
this.
Megan.
We've been
Sorry.
talking about how to handle this for years. This is a recurring issue. There's no agency that's set up to do it. Like I said, we've done it different every year in the past. This year in January, the question was, does the city have a facility? What's their plan? And I'm like, we are not going to put Lincoln Center into operation. So, and I'm very sure at that point I said, but obviously, as we have every year, when push comes to shove, we've got a responsibility to keep people from freezing to death, and we're going to do our part. And that's what you see today is, I thought it was our fair share of the 13,000.
And I think a couple different dates on there was, I can't tell for sure, I think it's -6 or -8, those were the low. That January 12th to January 20th were maybe the coldest stretch that we had, I think, over the winter.
Well, and I think you need to, it's pretty nice outside today, so it may be hard to remember, but the circumstances are so bad that at one point, the police found an individual that was in a dumpster who had already been, I don't know what the correct term is, but was not allowed to use the services at Wesley House. That was returned to Wesley House, and the staff that night said, by all means, get them in here. I mean, when it's -8, it's -8, and things change. So I think if anything, whether you want to approve the 6,000 or not, somebody needs to step up and acknowledge that an organization is doing that job, and every year, a different organization, it seems like, does that job. And we maybe need to do a little more planning on the front end and figure out really what we're going to do, because I can promise you, in the 12 years I've been here, every year it's come up. Every year, the city's been involved in the solution, because as a city, we just can't have people freezing to death on the streets.
Well, nobody wants anybody to freeze to death there, and I'm happy that they got the grant, and they covered, contracted service, shelter cost. The question I have is, with the $6,000, I don't know what that means. It could be how many people worked. could have been 10,000 for all I know, but I see something else on here. They paid $3,453 for security, and then what's, the repairs and maintenance was $3,150. What is that about?
That's not I don't know, I didn't operate the place. I just came up with 6,000 because it sounded like a number that was somewhere near half that we could say was wages and salaries. Like I said, if we were operating it, I could answer that question, but we specifically chose not to operate Lincoln Center as a shelter this year, so I don't have an answer for that.
When the city had Lincoln Center as a shelter, warming shelter, we paid our employees' salary and wages, right?
No, that was done, like I said, by volunteers. Volunteers got together and said, we want to do this, is there a facility? And we selected Lincoln Center. And I think at that point, we may have maxed out at 14 people a night. This was a 50-person operation that night. There was 50 people in there. That's a lot different than the volunteers handling 8 to 12 people for a couple of days. So I don't really know what went on for that week. It must have been, I just know we weren't involved in it.
Well, I think that if, obviously it's gonna happen again this next winter, and I think we need to be ahead of the curve, and we need also a full accounting. Just throwing out $3,000 or $6,000 doesn't, in my book, doesn't work. I want to see the wages. I don't care about the people. I just want to see what they're paying per hour to these people who are doing that. And if they got overtime, how much that is. You know, this is the people's money we're spending. So I'd like to see a little bit more accountability on it.
Well, I'm sure Wesley House can provide an itemized statement.
Well, and I think we need to remember, I mean, we've been talking about these things since May and June.
Yeah.
And people, and in May and June, everybody's got an idea, and it's something that we need to work on, and it's something we need to get to, but every year it comes down to, we're a week from it freezing, and what's the city gonna do about it? So, I totally agree. I personally don't wanna be in the, shelter business, but if we obviously are in it, I don't wanna be in the cemetery business, we own a cemetery. And there's a lot of businesses and things that the city is doing that we think we have to do in the end because it's necessary. So I agree, but this is the bill that's in front of us, and, you know, that's, I think we do have a responsibility to, I don't know what the math is, like Commissioner or Mayor Height brought it up the other day, it was 30 cents a person per year
If you
to
take
keep those people
21,000
safe for
people.
that week. I know, but it definitely, I mean, I talked to each one of you at some point about it, and I think Jay had a really good idea that I shared with Cheryl, I know, in our meeting, which is, it'd be nice to know in May or June how this was gonna be provided and have an MOU signed beforehand, so we knew what we were getting into, but nobody seems to step up and during those conversations say, we're gonna do it. It just kind of happens as we need it. Because for one thing, we don't know if it's gonna be 2 months of freezing or 2 weeks or 2 days. And it's a huge commitment, and as Heather explained, or Megan, excuse me, the grant money, I mean, is this the new trend? Are we gonna get 95,000 out of a $500,000 ask? I mean, we usually get a lot more, so until we get those grant dollars, we don't even really know what we have to operate with.
We've been cut.
Sorry for butchering you.
No, it's okay. We've been cut for the past few years, because there's more agencies applying through the state of Kansas.
Yeah, please come to the mic if
Yeah.
you would, I know it's
There's a lot of different agencies applying through the state of Kansas because it's through the Kansas Housing Corporation. So the more agencies or the more organizations that apply, our grant then gets cut short and short. We can always apply for what we think we need, but a majority, like I've said before, will go to rapid rehousing and homeless prevention to house the individuals, and that's what my office does. The day shelter is great, and the overnight, but we're gonna focus on that. So, it could go down next year. So come September, we apply again and we don't know what we're gonna get.
So Megan, when you said that there's an increase in applications across the state for similar items, I mean, same type of, the application process, is it for the same request essentially?
Yes.
For every community? So,
Yeah.
So it's safe to say that, as we already know, this is not a Pittsburgh problem, it's a statewide problem, nationwide problem.
That is correct.
And the grant applications are proving that, so.
Yes.
And I think, Darren, you said something about we maxed out something at Lincoln Center when we had that. Well, I think we also are maxing out volunteer hours, especially when you try to or try to staff a 24-hour cold weather shelter because it's -8 or -9 outside at night. I mean, you can only ask people to volunteer for so much, and at some point, paying them is the only, I mean, again, and that goes back to not knowing how many cold weather days you're gonna have, or how many days you're gonna have to operate. So yeah, again, this, what you said earlier, dividing that between the population of Pittsburgh, it comes out to about 30 cents per person in Pittsburgh, to make sure that we didn't have any fellow citizens, whether they're, and I know it's arguable that some of them aren't our citizens, guess what? They are in our community, so we do have a responsibility to take care of fellow human beings. As far as making sure they don't freeze to death on the street and having a place to go, so.
To that end, just to clarify for everybody, the challenge is the facility. If you haven't noticed, whether it's at Lincoln, whether it was at the church, whether this year it's at Wesley House, nobody's willing to say, this is the facility, that when this happens, we'll be there, and then we can all worry about how staffing it and how who's got the insurance and who's gonna feed them and blanket them. But without a facility, it's literally just a rotating, I don't have a better answer for, I know your point is well taken. It's tax dollars, whether it's 6,000 or 60,000, we want to know how we're going to spend and what we're spending on. But until we identify some facility, that'll tell us who's going to operate that facility, who's going to own that facility, and where those costs are going to be handled. And that's always the confusing part.
Well, I'm kind of like Doc. I'm glad we have this place that they could go and get warm, but for me, the 6,000 was just a number. I don't know when taxpayers ask me, what's the breakdown of that cost? I don't have it to give them. It's just something that was wrote down. They needed $6,000, so I'm for the warming shelter, but I just, because of not knowing how many people were involved, what we pay them per hour, that's the only thing that would keep me from voting. I don't have that information to give to taxpayers when I'm asked where this 6,000 went.
I'd like to inquire about something. The overnight shelter grant, none of us have seen that.
That's not a grant through the city.
It says funding allocated from overnight shelter grant. So there's nobody here from Wesley House to even explain some of these questions that we have. And I know Darren's doing the best he can, but, again, what Doc said about the security costs and the repairs and maintenance. And if I hired a security firm and I still had to pay repairs and maintenance like that, I would have fired them right off. I don't understand it. I know that's not what you're asking, but the salaries and the wages, it's like they did it and then they gave you the bill after the fact, unless they talked about it to you before. And I can't believe we can't come up with a solution after 12 years. We talk about it all the time. Why? Why can't we come up with a solution?
Because you can't get anybody to nail down at that particular time what you need. I mean, not what you need, but you need a shelter. So I think we should sit down with Wesley House and say, okay, in an emergency situation such as this, a code blue, whatever you want to call it, this is what we're going to do. If you're going to bring people, you are going to bring people in, and you're going to keep them warm. We're going to shoulder some of the cost. You're going to shoulder some of the costs. In the meantime, we apply for these grants and see how much money we can get.
What about all the people we didn't see in the dumpster that were just roaming the streets, just trying to keep warm or whatever? What about all those people? We've got to come up with a solution.
I don't know where you guys have been. We've been working on this for over a year.
We have been around.
I know,
We know
I know
what
you
it
have.
is.
Doc tried to find a place. Wesley House didn't want it, the facility is not made for what we're using it for. And Doc tried to find an alternative.
I went everywhere and I couldn't find it.
And the First United Methodist Church stepped up again. And I don't know how,
That's what I was just going to say. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. There's not a huge competition out here for people, charitable organizations or facilities saying, hey, we want this. I mean, but thank goodness Wesley House stepped up again and said, hey, reluctantly, we'll do this because there's such a need. So
I mean, if it's important to you to see the breakdown of the salaries and how that was, we can table this and Wesley House can submit that, but
I don't
I mean-
think, we need to do that at this point. They say they have incurred the cost. I think we should give them our share and make better plans for next year.
Well, I would like to see the breakdown in case I'm asked by the taxpayers that we're spending their money where it went.
I'm Sarah Henry, and I'm financial secretary for the First United Methodist Church. And of course, we deal with billing and invoices and salaries for Wesley House also. And I know that they have a breakdown of exactly what was spent, because we have impressed upon them that we do not pay invoices if they don't have a breakdown. So I will be happy when I leave here tonight and get with Leah, and we will have a blow-by-blow accounting of what they had to, what was incurred. And I'm trying to remember, but I heard conversation, or I heard that there was an incident and somebody broke. One of the people that were there broke something, like a window. And
that's not this, Sarah.
What?
That's not this. This was the boiler or something, the maintenance and repairs.
Okay, well,
Yeah, what you're talking about is a separate issue.
okay,
Well, I'm like you, sir, I didn't know what that meant. Evidently, Dawn's got more information than the rest of us, so.
well, and there is a bill for a boiler that had to be replaced.
Yeah, so.
And they're trying to, we were to have a trustees meeting last week and it was postponed, but we are having a trustees meeting tomorrow night. And that bill will be presented, but that does not have anything to do with the overnight.
Okay.
So there's other things in, I mean, this bill is for other things, like you said, a boiler.
Right, yeah, but
So-
but that, we're not, Wesley House is not asking you to pay for that.
No, no.
So
It's
really, it's immaterial to the commissioners as to what those are.
Right, but I will ask Leah to have a breakdown of that week.
So
And-
is there any way we could have it like at the next meeting and vote
Oh,
on
sure.
it then? And just
Yes.
table it until then?
So, okay, the matter at hand is whether or not to pay this, so I either need a motion to move it forward or to table it for this invoice.
Well, I'd make a
Motion
motion
to
to table it till next meeting, so we get a breakdown of the cost.
There will be no problem in getting a breakdown for the
Thank you,
next
sir.
meeting.
Yeah.
Thank you very
We
much.
appreciate
Thanks,
that.
All right, so it's been moved and seconded to table this until we have a more detailed invoice on what the $6,003.49 will be. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
And I think we can all agree, nobody wants to see anybody freeze to
Freeze
death.
to death.
None of us do.
Motion carried. So, all right, thank you. Moving on to item C. Trans Systems raised grant writing proposal. Consider staff recommendation to enter into an agreement with Trans System in which Trans Systems will prepare an application to the Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity, RAISE, acronym grant, program for improvements to Atkinson and Free King Highway at the cost of $53,126.31. And that is the cost associated with the grant
The
writing.
grant writing, right, and that's a number only an engineer would come up with. I think, Mayor and Commissioners, I think you all know that the roads that are leading to and from the Monte Industrial Park were never designed for the amount of truck traffic that's occurring right now, whether it's the grain trucks from Scholar Grain or from our manufacturers that are along Atkinson, as well as the transload facility that Watco has. There's been a great deal of more truck traffic on those roads, and the deterioration is becoming pretty evident. Right? The unfortunate reality is it is incredibly expensive to upgrade those roads to be able to accommodate the kind of truck traffic that they're experiencing. To be able to get a handle on that and to make a proposal to get some grant funding for that, it takes a sophisticated grant writer and an engineering firm really to be able to do that, and that's what Trans Systems is. This is one of the services that Trans Systems provides is grant writing for the more complicated grant proposals. the RAISE grant program is one of the largest grant programs that the Department of Transportation has that local governments can apply for. And that's what they've put together, a proposal for this program. By the way, the grant proposal, the cost of what they're requesting is $18 million. All right, this is the level of work, the cost that it is to increase the roads from being just 2 lanes with no shoulders to 2 wider lanes in concrete with shoulders. All right, this is what it requires. This is what the industrial users require, so that their trucks can pull off if they have a problem, and you can still get other trucks by them. All right? So this money that's being asked for today is to pay Trans-Systems for preparing the grant, and it takes a long time to prepare these grants. I prepared one last year. It took me it took me about 2 months of time, and a lot of my time to do this. And I was not good at it. I didn't get the grant. Trans-Systems is much better at it, much better chance to get it. The great thing about this process that we've gone through, and this is really one of the more heartening things that I've experienced recently, is that we got approval to include both the county and the city of Frontenac. There's about 1,800 feet of freaking that goes through the city of Frontenac, and they did agree to participate in this program as well. So their approval was very important to the strength of the proposal. So they're actually going to, they support the project of increasing the size of Free King and Atkinson. So,
What's the deadline of the grant?
tomorrow.
Tomorrow. How long you been working on it?
They've been working on it already.
So,
Yes. Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Jay, I had the opportunity to talk to the county commissioner and the mayor of Frontenac. And, you know, I think this is the way to do it. That's gonna affect all 3 of us. And working together, I have to commend you on doing that to get them all on board with this project.
And it really was, I mean, the current administration in Frontenac, as well as the administration of the county, are very open to these kind of things. By the way, upcoming, I think I might have mentioned this to you, upcoming is a regional transportation plan that we're getting. Actually, Susan's not here, but the Regional Planning Commission, the Southeast Kansas Regional Planning Commission, has received a large grant to do a regional transportation plan. We anticipate that this particular project, whether or not we get the grant, will be included as part of that regional transportation plan. So it's a big deal, and to get everybody together is really important, and it's been very, very encouraging for me to get the kind of support from the county and from the city of Frontenac.
I'd move to approve.
Second?
Been moved and seconded to approve the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Jay, did you mention the county's paying half?
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is pretty important. I don't want the
Yeah.
county to go, the county's agreed to pay half of this grant writer, so I don't know if that.
I didn't want to commit them in public, but they've agreed to do that. All right.
Well, they already approved it. I mean,
Darren was at the meeting, so.
Yeah, it's past that point, yeah. But I do think we want to acknowledge that, and that letter of support that Frontenac wrote was important.
We got a lot of great letters of support.
Very good. All right, non-agenda reports and requests. I just have something real quick. Earlier this afternoon, some of the fellow commissioners and I were able to participate in the groundbreaking at Four Oaks Golf Course, miniature golf course. Fantastic project that was made possible through a partnership, well, a grant with federal, I think it was Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks, Toby, is that right? A state grant, and then also significant contributions, private money, to bring a much needed, much loved, if you ever had kids and you ever had a date night and you were looking for something to do on a nice summer night, go miniature golfing. Well, we haven't had that for a couple of years, or at least, you know, something we could be proud of. So we're gonna have that. That's starting, work's already started. And I'd just like to commend everybody that did the heavy lifting. In particular, Joe Leake went out of his way to make sure he went out and sought private donations and hole sponsorships for the permanent sponsorship of those holes and the financial commitment for that. So great project, perfect example of what we can accomplish as a community if we all work together on that. So great job. So Taylor, would you, Fire Chief, would you please come up and tell us a little bit about recent fire. Was that Saturday night, I think it was, or Saturday afternoon?
Yes, it was Saturday afternoon. Saturday wasn't quite as windy as we had today, but it was windy enough that burning was discouraged. However, our crews spent the day fighting small grass fires in town. Around 2 o'clock or so, they got called to one that we had 2 trucks committed to another one. Quint 3 came from the south into town up to 20th Street. That old salvage yard there, kind of across from Metal Arc School, where a fire had started, and it started spreading north. We quickly realized that we needed more resources. The other 2 trucks were coming, but they were also coming with empty water tanks, that sort of thing. But this fire got out ahead of us. It got into the salvage yard, the cars, the tires were blowing up while the guys are running around out there. We immediately asked for Baker and Frontenac to come. They came quickly. We needed manpower and we needed their UTVs to get back through this brush. So they came, they helped us out. However, the fire was moving quick. It ended up going through the timber. The radiant heat caught a privacy fence on a residence on fire, which again, it was wind driven, pushed that right up to the house. We had to break a crew off, basically prevented a major house fire. The house was affected, there was some damage to it, but we kept it from getting inside. At this point, again, we're down people, so we have Sheridan Township from Cherokee come, and we ended up having ARMA come and help us. All of that on top of Pittsburgh PD blocking roads, and Matt Bacon, the public utilities guys, they showed up with some heavy equipment to help if they were able. At the end of the day, we had 30 acres of grass and timber that was affected. Dozens of these salvage yard cars burning out there, and then 1 home affected. This event was significant. It taxed our resources. My guys, they went out there and they'd had a long day. They went to work and did great. Very, very proud of them. Equally as important was the surrounding departments. They were fighting their own grass fires all day long. We called, they came, without even a second thought. So it's one of those things that here, small town USA, rural America, we take that for granted, the neighbors helping neighbors sort of thing. But I just wanted to commend everybody that was on that operation, acknowledge them and their hard work on that day. And it really was a successful incident. Long, hot, tiring, but it was successful. So just wanted to acknowledge that for our guys and our guys, our departments who pitched in and helped. So.
Did you have a total number of mutual aid agencies?
That mutual aid would have been ARMA, Baker Township, Frontenac, and Sheridan Township. So there's 4 other. Crawford County EMS was also on site at the drop of a hat, especially with that structure fire. So, those 5, our public utilities department, our PD, our fire department, everybody came together and worked out. It worked spectacularly. So.
Just like to publicly thank everybody that was involved in that. That was a great show of mutual aid, and again, going back to the spirit of community support, community involvement. That's a great testament. Sad that it happened, but good job.
Absolutely, thank you.
Mayor, we've got one more. So Mr. Lair asked about what are we doing about the Jolly Fox? As most of the businesses came out of the pandemic that owed us money from loans, we held that off because they were closed a couple of years ago. They all came out at different speeds. They all are making payments. The Jolly Fox did make a payment in January, obviously, with a balance due of $200,000, and I think it's hard to determine when they're open and when they're closed. I thought at one point they were closed. I brought it up to the chair of the EDAC and Blake just the other day. They're going to set a meeting, but yeah, we take, Blake especially takes all the balances due very serious. You saw all the abatements on this week's agenda. We manage it well, but that is one that we'll be finding out where we stand. Yeah, I've already asked Henry and the group to go through and pull out the agreement and see what our options are, but collecting on that and making sure that the taxpayers are made whole is something that we're working on and we'll continue to work on, and we'll have an answer for you hopefully as soon as we get one.
The loan is guaranteed by the principals, right?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I have no doubt we'll be getting reimbursed. We're trying to, we loan this money because we're not a bank. This is usually the money that's loaned instead of a bank or in addition to what the bank did. So I know everybody wants to, they want the city to act like a business. I think when it comes to financials, we've got a great financial team. We do treat the money and take it very serious, but in this case, come out of the pandemic, we were trying to be patient with the people in this town that own businesses, but it does come to a point where, they're responsible for the note, and thanks to Henry's work and the leadership of the staff, we do have very clear arrangements for personal guarantees from everybody that was a principal, and that's more than one person, so I'm confident we'll get a resolution pretty quick, and we'll let you know when we do.
Yeah, thank you very much for letting us know that. I didn't know where we were at on this or anything, but I am very proud that you are getting in the middle of it, and Henry, and did a good job. Thank you.
You betcha.
All right, anybody else?
Yeah, I have a comment. Getting back on the warming shelter, none of us in this room want to see somebody freeze to death. So I'm very much appreciative that Wesley House stepped up to the plate and done this. But also, I want to read something here, where I'm at on stuff. This is from a League of Municipalities handbook. Public office is a public trust. Municipal office is a public trust created in the interest of and for the benefit of the people. Public officers are fiduciaries and trustees of public interest, and they owe undivided loyalty to the people they serve. So that's why I asked for the breakdown, and thank Sarah Henry that's going to provide the breakdown of this $6,000 to show the public that we know it's their money, and if they ask me where it went, I have something to show from Wesley House. So.
I don't want to belittle the point, but as the former chair of the Crawford County Local Emergency Planning Committee, I contacted both the city and the county to see what the plans were, and there were none. So that's why Wesley House stepped up. So, anyway.
Well, let's see if we can prevent that from happening
Yeah,
this year.
it is it's a city and a county issue.
Anybody else? All right, so our Pittsburgh positive for this week, or this meeting. Somebody many of you probably know, Susie Budarak, and I probably said her last name wrong because I don't think anybody in Pittsburgh knows her as that. They just know her as Susie from Starbucks, or Starbucks Susie.
Oh.
And I'm telling you, I don't know if I can think of a more positive person in our community. If you've ever went through the drive-through or had Susie wait on you when you got your morning coffee, or if you were heading out of town on an out-of-town trip, I don't think anybody has ever left Starbucks not feeling really good about themselves. She's an amazing person, and I just would like to commend her on her positivity. And like I said, if you don't leave there, I mean, she's full of compliments. I don't know where she gets her positivity from, but we could all learn from it and be better people for it. So thank you, Susie, and we'll get her in here in a couple weeks to recognize her with a certificate. So if there's nothing else, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I second it.
Been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Nay. We are adjourned.